Hey guys, tonight we unroll a scroll you didn't ask for and plunge into the creamy, crumbling, curdled depths of a profession you almost certainly wouldn't survive. Royal cheese inspection in the late medieval period. Picture this. Dawn has barely cracked. The air smells faintly of mildew and goat, and somewhere nearby, a wheel of semi-aged sheep's milk cheddar is waiting to ruin your entire political standing. You're underpaid, oversniffed, and permanently one whiff away from exile. And yes, this job was real, terrifying, and considered noble only by those who had never once been sucker punched by an overripe Stilton wrapped in diplomatic scandal. You're just trying not to breathe through your mouth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments, because someone out there is probably falling asleep to tales of cheese-related legal consequences. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not woken gently. There is no harp, no drowsy rooster crowing across dew-covered hills. There is instead a sharply rung cheese bell, hammered 3 times by a boy whose left hand is already wrapped in linen from some earlier dairy-related injury. His breath smells faintly of curdled sleep and duty. "Royal cheese inspector," he says, as if accusing you of something. You groan, or attempt to. Unfortunately, groaning is considered disrespectful before sunrise, and especially disrespectful within 20 feet of an unsealed cheese wheel. The apprentice frowns. He presents your morning infraction sheet, a narrow scroll upon which someone has already scribbled, "Slept too close to a breathable rind," and "snooze length exceeded Brie protocol." You don't ask how they know. You've long since stopped asking things. You sit up. Your bed, such as it is a hay mat topped with a ceremonial tasting cloth. It smells vaguely of almonds and despair. Above your head hangs a small wooden plaque that reads, "Palate before comfort." You dress in the official uniform, teal wool tunic, leather nose shield, optional but heavily judged, and your cheese pouch, into which you'll soon tuck samples with the same care others might reserve for holy relics or poisoned muffins. The walk to the inspection chamber is long and uphill, always uphill. You suspect the castle was designed by someone with a grudge against calves. Along the way, you pass a guard posted outside the royal dairy vault. He salutes with a wedge of dried Gouda. You nod. You're too tired to respond with the proper return gesture, which involves miming the spiral of a corkscrew and bowing at a 37-degree angle. You settle for blinking twice and hoping that's legally sufficient. Your first real task arrives with a clang. A steward, tall, angular, and smelling faintly of vinegar, unlocks the main inspection door and gestures for you to follow. Inside, several wheels of cheese sit beneath silver mesh, as though they might escape or begin speaking blasphemy if uncovered too early. Your job: sniff, prod, rotate, record. So you do. The first wheel, a semi-aged Gruyere from the lower duchy, passes the texture test but presents a suspicious rind ripple. You glance at the steward. "Is it?" You begin. "Don't finish that sentence unless you have witnesses," he says. "Right, of course." You move on. Second wheel, a double cream brie, royal supply. The aroma is confident, the center soft but holding, the bloom delicate. You note, compliant, hints of marsh, zero defiance. The steward nods. Then comes the goat cheese. You hate goat cheese, not because of taste, but because it talks back. Not literally, but emotionally. Goat cheese judges you as much as you judge it. And this one, a puck-sized disc wrapped in waxed basil, is practically sneering. You sniff. You pause. You recoil slightly. The steward raises one brow. A problem? It's pungent. He leans forward, takes his own cautious sniff, then scribbles something on his scroll. Mark as high pardon potential. You blink. Pardon? Royal protocol. If the Queen finds it offensive, it's used as a gesture of forgiveness, a symbolic punishment. Offenders must eat it publicly. Of course. You log it accordingly. By now, your nostrils feel pickled. Your eyes sting slightly from the ammonia traces in a particularly combative Roquefort. Your fingers are coated with more microbial culture than most monastic libraries. You're not even halfway through the tray. The steward steps forward and clears his throat. Before we proceed, he says solemnly, I must read you the Oath of Soft Rinds. You nod. He unfolds a small cheese-stained parchment and recites, by curd and crust, by bloom and brine, I vow to sniff with eyes and mind, to never falsely rank a wheel, nor let unworthy rinds conceal. I honor mold, I honor milk, and swear to serve both firm and silk. You repeat it. You fumble the rhythm. That will be noted. Still, the ceremony concludes. A bell rings somewhere, signaling that another inspector has fainted in the south wing. You're told to pace yourself. You try. But pacing yourself is hard when every cheese has a backstory and half of them involve curses. One wedge allegedly caused the prince's ferret to pass out. Another was made on a full moon and is therefore taxed as mystically aged. A third smells exactly like your Aunt Beatrix's coat closet, and you don't know how to score that under current guidelines. Eventually, someone hands you a chart. It's titled Cheese Volatility Index, Week 19. You see your name near the bottom, not in the rank of sniffers, but under possible emotional bias. You exhale and begin again. Because if you survive until sunset, you'll be allowed to check the royal fondue pot. And that's the closest you've come to happiness in weeks. You thought you'd get a break between sniffings. You don't. You're shuffled directly from the initial chamber into what's called the Codex Room, which sounds noble and scholarly, but smells like footnotes, damp parchment, and a wheel of Gouda someone gave up on halfway through preservation. This is where you're expected to learn, quickly, the legal boundaries of acceptable cheese, its sigils, and its permitted bacteria to rind ratios as defined in the Gruyere Codex of 1417, revised regretfully in 1421. The instructor is already waiting. Her name is Magistra Dulcinea, and she hasn't blinked since you walked in. She wears gloves, not for hygiene, for authority. One is indigo, the other saffron, symbolizing firmness and yield, or possibly rebellion and compliance, depending on which cheese tribunal you ask. She gestures to a tall stack of scrolls. These, she says, are your laws. You nod. She gestures to an even taller stack. And these are the exceptions. You wilt slightly. You're handed a parchment titled Mold Classification and Ethical Yeasts. There's a diagram showing what happens if a cheese's bloom flares too early. One end of the scale is labeled Heavenly Harmony, the other Treasonous Crumble. You read silently while Magistra Dulcinea begins quizzing you out loud. What is the penalty for unsealed Gruyere served at a noble's third meal? You blink. Confiscation and apology cheese presented to the guest, correct? She says, not pleased. What if it's cut in a triangular pattern, but marked for spiral notation? Reassessment by a mold auditor? She narrows her eyes. And a foot bath for the inspector. Never forget the foot bath. Right. You begin to sweat. She hands you a small wooden box with 7 tiny samples inside. Each is marked with a sigil: wave, cross, crown, goat, fish, sun, and something that looks suspiciously like a screaming moon. These are the cheese seal, she says. You must know them by scent alone. Sight is considered unreliable. She places a blindfold over your eyes and brings the first sample under your nose. You inhale. It smells like hay and ambition. Goat, you guess. She hums disapprovingly. That was sun. Next. It smells like regret and maybe cloves. Fish? Crown. The third is salty, sharp, and oddly confident. Wave. She pauses. Correct. You remove the blindfold at the end of the test to find she's scribbled something on a slate beside her. Palette, moody, bias, earth tones. Response time, acceptable under duress. You're not sure whether that means you pass or should be publicly buttered. She dismisses you with a final warning. Never trust a cheese that breaks before the queen's spoon touches it. That's the first law. That's the last law. Everything in between is seasoning. You curtsy out of pure confusion. Back in the corridor, you nearly trip over a page sprinting the opposite direction. Carrying a scroll stamped in curd wax red, urgent news from the way dispatcher's hall. You're told to hurry. Apparently there's been an incident near the cathedral kitchens. You're not allowed to run. Cheese inspectors must approach crises like cooled fondue, so you hustle with purpose. When you arrive, there's a crowd. A wheel of Gruyere has been discovered unstamped, which is illegal. But worse, it's half-eaten. Who tasted it, you ask? A steward shrugs. No one admits to it, but someone replaced the central wedge with buttered turnip. You're handed the remaining wedge for inspection. You hold it like it might explode. The texture is wrong, slightly too creamy for its age category. The rind, oh no, it bears a faint imprint. Not the royal spiral, but a crude replica, a forgery. You look around. This is a scandal. You're handed the official Gruyere seal for verification. It's kept in a locked box, surrounded by a ribbon of nettle leaves and a single goose feather. A deterrent, allegedly. You press it gently into the rind. The marks don't match. Counterfeit, you whisper. Someone gasps. A priest faints. The archdeacon covers a soup pot reverently. You sign the parchment of Declaration 12b. False Gruyere discovery within 40 paces of a holy kitchen. This goes directly to the Queen's tasting ledger. A child offers you a cloth to wipe your hands. It's embroidered or firmness in crisis. You nod in thanks. Then the bishop arrives. He doesn't speak. He simply taps his forehead with a sprig of rosemary and walks away. This means the matter is officially under theological review. You return to the inspection offices shaken. You sit. You breathe. A steward offers you tea. It smells faintly of blue. You ask if it's safe. He shrugs. It's been steeped in Stilton. For stamina, you sip it anyway. Because you have 5 more hours on duty, and the next case? A cart of aged cheddar with dual citizenship. Part Somerset, part Bavarian. Neither territory wants to claim it. It's starting to ferment ideologically. You stare at your ledger. You note, mold, defiant, texture, vengeful, aroma, like forgiveness, but only to the brave. You sign, because somehow you are the law now. And the law smells faintly of toasted nuts. You've only just set down your quill. carefully as the ink is thickened with clarified butter for stability when someone shouts, "Camembert loose in the courtyard." There are exactly 5 words in that sentence that no one wants to hear, least of all you. You look up just in time to see a streak of pale, glistening chaos roll past the window. The camembert is not small. This isn't a sample-size round. This is a full ceremonial wheel, one meant for the Queen's midwinter gratitude platter, and it's currently gathering speed and grass stains as it barrels toward the bishop's reflecting basin. You're out the door before your brain catches up with your legs. You arrive in the courtyard to chaos. Servants scatter. A pigeon explodes into flight. Someone screams, "Protect the lilies!" And another yells, "That's not Brie! It's worse!" The wheel hits a cobblestone bump, hops, rotates midair, and splashes with an undignified bloop into a large marble basin filled with the bishop's reserved mulled wine. Silence falls. Then a soft fizzing noise as the rind reacts to cinnamon. The bishop steps forward. He looks at you. He does not speak. He simply lifts the wheel out of the basin with salad tongues. Where did he even get those? And presents it to you like a newborn, dripping, shivering, embarrassed. "This," he says, "was unsealed." You nod. "This," he continues, "was destined for communion." You wince. He pauses. "Now it's soup." You are required to write a full report. The parchment is already waiting for you in the chapel vestibule. It bears the header, Incident 437C, the camembert that wasn't. You write the usual. Dato Pranaywanwanirage, Terrain time, Atursur Sun, Sartor witnesses. Emotional tenor, mild panic with notes of time. You describe the texture upon retrieval, resilient under pressure, but morally softened. You submit the report with a wax stamp of the rolling wheel emblem, a rare designation used only for cheese-related property damage, exceeding a minor relic's value. That earns you a pause from the clerk. "You're going to get questioned," she says. You sigh. "I already have answers." You do not, in fact, have answers. Back in the inspection offices, you're immediately reassigned to Security Checkpoint E, the area between the granary and the diplomat's breakfast hall. Your task? Monitor all incoming dairy for signs of smuggled emotion. You raise an eyebrow. The steward clarifies. "There's a rumor," he says, "that a rogue merchant has begun soaking camembert in crushed lavender and melancholy. The result? Cheese that tastes like yearning." You blink. "Is that illegal?" He nods gravely. "Only if it causes sighing." You are handed a sigh-o-meter, a wooden cone fitted with a velvet ribbon and 3 wooden beads that rattle if exposed to dramatic exhalations. It's your job now. You spend the next hour opening linen parcels, sniffing cheese, and trying to interpret people's facial expressions without incurring an ethics report. Most deliveries are benign. A wedge of sleepy cheddar, a loaf-shaped brie with confidence issues, 1 wheel of Havarti that smells like Monday. Then it happens. A merchant, shifty eyes, excellent boots, presents a basket of soft rounds sealed with wax petals. "Just your average bloom," he says. You hold the sigh-o-meter near the cheese. Nothing. Then you break the seal on one. The ribbon shivers. 1 bead rolls. The merchant panics. "That doesn't prove anything!" You nod slowly. "It's okay. I just need you to breathe into this biscuit." He does. You bite it. It tastes like longing. Definitely lavender. The merchant is fined 1 wheel and asked to recite the 7 stages of acceptable affection in dairy transactions. He does. Badly. You confiscate the cheese and make a note on your roster. Emotionally infused rind, Recommend storage under wistful constraints. By this point, your feet ache, your nose is numb, and your soul smells faintly of violets and guilt. You consider asking for a transfer, but you know what happens to transferred inspectors. They get assigned to fondue monitoring. No one wants that. Fondue monitoring is where cheese goes to scream. So instead, you request a temporary rotation. And that's how you end up on butter detail. It sounds soft. It isn't. The Butter Syndicate occupies the east wing of the court kitchens, a zone referred to unofficially as the Churn Cathedral. You must pass 3 checkpoints and a man named Bastian, whose left hand is covered in butter tattoos. He nods once. You enter. The air is warm, yeasty, tense. Butter rounds are stacked like holy tablets on chilled shelves. You're told to inspect each for unauthorized swirls. What's an unauthorized swirl, you ask? Anything resembling a crest, Bastian says, especially foxes. The salted fox family's been trying to sneak their emblem into palace dishes for generations. You inspect 25 rounds. 18 are clear. 7 have questionable patterns. You bring one to Bastian. He stares at it for a full minute, then whispers, "That's a badger." "Barely." You both nod. The badger butter is marked for melting and will be repurposed into anonymous scone lubrication. You're offered a break. You decline. Your nose is dead, your tongue confused, and your sense of justice covered in dairy. But you're starting to feel something strange. Not pride exactly. Something cheesier, something braver. You are a royal cheese inspector. And nothing, not lavender sighs, not rolling camemberts, not buttercrests nor bishop basins, can stop you. Unless, of course, someone offers you a fondue shift. Then you're hiding in the onion cellar. You should have taken the onion cellar shift, because just when your nose begins to forgive you, when your boots stop sticking to the kitchen tiles, and the butter dreams fade to a soft, oily haze, you're summoned for a field inspection. "Suspicion of rind fraud in Courtyard B," says the scroll, delivered by a raven with unsettlingly judgmental eyes. You barely have time to swap your butter apron for your outdoor sash. On the way, a steward hands you a fresh Way Ink citation parchment and a vial of powdered brine for emergency testing. You do not ask what that means. Last time you did, someone handed you a spoon and whispered, "May your courage be curdled." Courtyard B is a cobbled square between the Diplomat's stables and the Royal Pickle Fountain. It's where most minor merchants and traveling dairymancers peddle their goods under canvas awnings that smell like mildew, goats, and ambition. Today's scene, cheese chaos. One cart overturned, rounds rolling into hedges, a merchant screaming something about a Bloom betrayal, and a small crowd gathering, equal parts entertained and offended. You push through the mess and spot the suspect, a squat man in a tattered teal jerkin, clutching a crate labeled Certified Royal Rind, Camembert Edition. The lettering is too bold, too flourishy. You already suspect. You hold up your inspector's seal and approach. "Sir," you say, "are you aware that bloomy rind requires a double crest verification under Article 13B? He blinks. "I applied the wax, I did the chant." "Which chant?" He clears his throat. "Rind to win, cream within, bloom my badge and bless my sin?" You stare. "That's a recipe," you say. He drops the crate. "Cheese rolls," you kneel. They look right. Soft edges, gentle bloom, ivory glisten. But that's the thing about counterfeit cheese. It's all surface theater. You slice one open. The texture is too smooth. The inner cream line is missing the subtle separation required in all camembert destined for royal quarters. You pull out your powdered brine. Sprinkle a touch on the exposed paste. If it's authentic, it will shimmer faintly and hum just a bit. Blessed by the Archbishop of Kurd during the spring rites. It does not. It sizzles. Gasps ripple through the crowd. One woman drops her onion. A page screams, "Sorcery!" The merchant bolts. You give chase. Your boots are not made for running. You trip over a decorative turnip. But the steward from earlier body checks the man near the compost barrels. He lands in a pile of radish tops and defeated dignity. You step forward, scroll in hand. Whoa, what's your name? You demand. He groans. Jean. Full name? He winces. Jean of Unregulated Rhines. Well then, you scribble his citation. Unauthorized bloom imitation, intent to defraud, reckless rolling, punishable by fine and mandatory sniff probation. He groans again. Please don't report me to the Blue-Vein Tribunal. You frown. We're past tribunal. This is a way crime. You hand him the scroll and confiscate his stock. As per protocol, the illegal rounds are to be melted immediately in a controlled fire. But since the royal brazier is currently occupied with ceremonial garlic, you opt for a temporary storage in the sniff vault. The sniff vault is exactly what it sounds like. A chamber with 10 separate drawers, each labeled with categories such as suspect funk, dubious bloom, and possible parmesan with agenda. You label Jean's wheel, bloom without blessing. Back in the courtyard, the crowd has dispersed. 2 pigeons are eating the compromised rind. You shoo them away gently. They look disappointed. Your next stop? The Blue-Vein Tribunal. Not to report Jean, but to testify in a previous case. You'd forgotten. You were summoned last week regarding the matter of Baron Tufflethorpe's Roquefort, which allegedly arrived at the Queen's banquet with only 2 veins, which, as everyone knows, is vein deficiency, and carries with it not only a taste emotion, but the social stigma of appearing too eager. The tribunal chamber is freezing. That's intentional, keeps the cheeses stable. The judges sit in a half circle, wearing deep blue robes with silver thread patterns meant to resemble mold. Each has a goblet, but no one ever drinks from them. They're filled with symbolic whey and a single floaty curd. You are sworn in. The oath involves touching a small cold wheel of Roquefort and reciting, "I speak with nose unclouded, with taste untainted, by curd, by crown, by cream unconcealed." You deliver your testimony. Baron Tufflethorpe's Roquefort, you state, was veined on the right, not the left, indicating an improper flip during the 3rd day of aging. One judge nods solemnly. The 3rd flip is sacred. Another records your words on a slate made of compressed whey paper. A moment of tension. Then the verdict. Mild censure. Temporary rind shame. No banquet rites for 3 moons. You exhale, that's fair. But as you exit, someone stops you. A clerk. You missed something, he says, handing you a small cheese knife, inscribed with a seal you don't recognize. What is this, you ask. Evidence, he says, found under your bench. You turn it over. Stamped on the hilt. Property of the Emmental Archives. Oh no. That's forbidden cheese. That's message cheese. The kind used in wars. And someone just slipped it into your belongings. You look around, but no one's watching. Just pigeons. Always the pigeons. You tuck the knife into your coat and walk calmly, like someone who hasn't just stumbled into a decades-old cheese conspiracy. But deep inside, your stomach churns. And it isn't the Roquefort. You try to forget about the knife. You really do. You tuck it into your satchel between your emergency sniff vial and a half-eaten oatcake, hoping the Emmental Archives are just a myth, like the singing Gouda or the yogurt wars. But the metal has weight, and the handle, it's warm, which is not something handles should be, especially when nestled beside a snack. Still, duty calls. You're escorted, without warning, to the Blue-Vein Tribunal's subchamber, a dim, echoing hall known unofficially as the Court of Dairy. This is where things get personal. This is where inspectors go to answer for their own olfactory sins. Today, it's your turn. Apparently, someone has accused you of palate partiality. The charge? That you failed to detect a counterfeit Roquefort earlier in the week and allowed it to pass as royal grade when it should have been downgraded to provincial indulgence at best. The evidence? A faint wobble in the blue marbling and a nose-forward salt imbalance that allegedly should have been obvious to a certified Level 3 inspector. Your Level 2, nervitinano, kasobitcher, which is inconvenient. You're seated before 3 tribunal members. They wear their usual frown robes, though one of them is also wearing a cheese brooch. A wedge of very tiny ceramic brie, glittered with something you hope isn't wax. The lead judge, quavering of the nose, opens a scroll dramatically. Your inspection record has been commendable, your cheese log orderly, but your flavor notes on this particular wheel concern us. She gestures toward a table where the accused Roquefort sits under a glass dome, looking slightly ashamed of itself. Describe your impression again. You swallow. The salt was bold, the bloom pronounced, the aroma direct but not aggressive. I noted citrus undertones. A collective inhale. Citrus, one whispers. In Roquefort, you realize the mistake. It may have been, my palate was overwhelmed. I had just exited a butter stall. Ah, Quaverine sighs. The infamous dairy cross-contamination defense. It sounds worse when she says it. Another judge, a thin man with a voice like a damp match, leans forward. Have you been near the Emmental sector recently? Your heart skips. You lie. No, Kathwanden. He nods. Too quickly. You're asked to identify the flaw in the Roquefort diagram, a parchment with exaggerated mold sketches and notes like wiggle of treason and crater of mischief. You squint. Point to the lower left quadrant. Improper vein dispersion. They exchange glances. The tension lifts. Quaverine waves a hand. Fine, warning issued, no demotion, but you'll attend a recalibration. You nod. Up the nose. You freeze. The nose? Yes, with sage smoke. You'll sniff 6 herbs and 2 nobles' gloves. It should reset your balance. Of course. Who doesn't love a good sage cleanse to the sinuses? You're dismissed. The clerk hands you a parchment. Recalibration scheduled. West Wing, smell chamber 3. Don't inhale too early. On your way out, someone slides a note into your hand. No one is near you. You unfold it. The knife found you for a reason. Cheese is not neutral. Meet at the fondue pit. Midnight. You consider ignoring it. But then you see the signature. A sigil of swirling holes. A symbol you've only seen in banned textbooks and one scandalous cheese play that ran 3 nights before being shut down by the Court of Derelict Conduct. The Emmental conspiracy. And it's reaching out to you. You spend the rest of the afternoon at recalibration. It's as strange as advertised. You kneel in a chamber surrounded by incense burners and baskets of thyme, while a steward waves noble's gloves beneath your nose in rhythmic patterns. You're instructed to breathe in confidence, exhale bias. Midway through, your brain tingles and you get the urge to apologize to every wheel you've ever downgraded, especially that one cheddar from Somerset that you dismissed as arrogant. You emerge refreshed, sort of, also slightly dizzy, and hungry. Back in your chamber, a wedge of approved cheese has been delivered. You sniff it cautiously. It smells like mint. You lift the tag. Mild cheddar, blessed by the Queen's second cousin, may provoke mild honesty and temporary digestive clarity. You nibble, then regret it. You blurt aloud, "I never liked court cheese poetry." A pigeon hears you and flies away, probably to tattle. Night falls. You pace. The knife is still warm. At exactly midnight, you sneak through the kitchen corridor, past the buttermilk barrels and into the fondue pit. Despite its name, it's not filled with molten cheese, not anymore. Now it's abandoned, quiet, except not empty. 3 figures stand around a bubbling pot of aged Gruyere, cloaked in patchwork robes stitched with cheese seals from across the realm. One turns to you. "You brought the knife?" You nod. They nod back. Then you're ready." "For what?" you ask. Their answer, "To learn why the Emmental holes are vanishing." You stare. Because if that's true, if someone is tampering with the air pockets, then it's not just fraud. It's treason. And you're already holding the weapon. The knife is on the table now, between a wheel of herbed raclette and what appears to be a diplomatic fondue ladle repurposed as a stirring stick. You're in the old fondue pit, deep beneath the palace kitchens, surrounded by 3 cloaked figures whose cheese credentials appear to be stitched directly into their sleeves. The tallest one removes their hood. It's Inspector Laura, thought exiled after the Great Manchego dispute of 29. You remember the scandal. She allegedly identified a Spanish import as flirtatiously French and was sentenced to catalog the butter scrolls for 6 months in silence. She meets your eyes. The Emmental's changing. You glance down at the pot. Bubbling Gruyere. A faint smell of nutmeg. Too much, probably. Laura continues. The holes, the famous Emmental voids, they're shrinking, disappearing, or worse, being filled. You blink. With what? She gestures to the knife. That blade belongs to the archive. The only one ever forged to cut coated cheese. You blink again. Sorry, you're coated? The second figure steps forward. You recognize them now too. Gregor the Slice, the only inspector known to have bitten into a Parmesan shard and declared it lying. He opens a scroll. On it, a cross-section diagram of Emmental, but the holes aren't holes. They're patterns, circular arrangements, carefully mapped, each one corresponding to the layout of ancient courtrooms, migration paths of pigeons, even celestial alignments. They're not random, Gregor says. They're messages. You sit down. Because frankly, your knees don't want to support the weight of a cheese-wide conspiracy. Laura nods toward the bubbling pot. Fondue, she says, is how they silence the evidence. You frown. Melt it down? Yes, you can't study a code if it's melted. Every rogue Emmental wheel is sent for ritual melting. They call it surplus reduction. We call it evidence destruction. The third figure finally speaks. Their voice is low, reedy. We think it goes to the Queen. What does? The messages hidden in the holes, passed to her via certain cheeses. We think she knows. You want to laugh. You don't. Because you remember the fondue ladle from earlier that afternoon. The one in the royal kitchen with a handle carved in the shape of a goat eating a scroll. At the time, you thought it was just folk whimsy. Now, you're less sure. Laura hands you a scroll, unsealed, lightly buttered. It's a list. Wheels confiscated, dates, scribes involved. One of them is your name, dated 3 weeks ago. A small Emmental wheel you downgraded for lacking spiritual bounce. It had holes, yes, but you dismissed them as misaligned. Now you wonder. Laura touches your shoulder. You've already been part of this. Gregor adds, you just didn't know which side. The third figure leans in. But now you do. You nod. Because it's either that or pass out. The plan is simple, or so they claim. You will inspect a newly arrived batch of Emmental destined for the Queen's breakfast board. You will do what you're trained to do, sniff, slice, record. But this time, you'll use the knife. And if the wheel is coated, you'll extract the pattern. Your satchel is already packed. 2 wedges of bribery cheddar, a false mustache made of spun whey, and a small vial of vinegar in case you need to fake a contamination. You leave the fondue pit in silence. At dawn, you arrive at the royal receiving hall. A servant meets you with a bow and a nose that clearly disapproves of your boots. Delivery from the Eastern Hills, he says. He opens the crate. 6 wheels, all Emmental, each marked with the Queen's crest. A sleeping goose surrounded by laurels. Standard protocol dictates you test 3, log 2, and sample 1. You do all 6, slowly, carefully. One smells wrong, not spoiled, just guarded. You set it aside. You remove the standard knife. Then from your boot, you slide out the archive blade. It gleams. The servant frowns. New model, you say. He shrugs. You cut. And there it is. Not a single hole, but a spiral, perfectly placed, clean-edged, unmistakably intentional. You tilt the wheel. Light catches it. Inside the pattern, small dots of blue mold. Too precise to be natural. You count them. 7. The number of the Council of Kurd. You exhale. Because that council was disbanded 20 years ago, which means someone, possibly the Queen herself, has been reactivating it through cheese. The servant returns. Shall I take it to the royal cold room? You pause. Then calmly you say, no, this one needs a warming. He blinks. Pardon? Fondue testing. He pales. But the Queen prefers her breakfast cheese pre-vetted. You wrap the wheel. You log it. Then you leave. Back through the kitchen corridors, past the pigeon loft, into a room behind the vinegar barrels. Laura's waiting. You set the wheel down. Gregor lights a lamp. And for the first time, you see it properly. A cheese not for eating, but for reading. You have no idea what it says yet. But one thing's clear. This Emmental isn't innocent. And neither are you. They don't open the cheese like a snack. They unfold it. With reverence, with gloves, with tweezers made of birch. The spiral inside the Emmental is dissected layer by layer, each new surface revealing another line of blue mold, another twist of curd that somehow curves too deliberately to be natural. It's like watching someone read a map that's been fermented. You sit beside the table, notebook open, trying to keep your breathing quiet. The air smells of rind and intention. Laura hovers over the wheel, murmuring measurements. Gregor mutters something about curd density anomalies. The third figure, still unnamed, holds a small copper compass that spins wildly every time it gets close to the core. Someone aged this on purpose, Laura whispers. You raise an eyebrow. As opposed to, she doesn't look up. There's normal aging, and then there's intentional aging. Temperature shifted, mold steered, age to shape, not just flavor. You jot that down, though your hand is shaking. Eventually, the wheel is reduced to its core, a single fist-sized nub of compacted curd. Gregor peels it open with the archive blade. Inside, a slip of parchment, still damp, smelling faintly of time and betrayal. Laura reads aloud. The bloom returns, the veil curdles. Gather at the orchard before the bees forget. There's a moment of silence. Gregor looks around. That's it? Laura nods grimly. That's more than enough. The unnamed one finally speaks. It's a call, a cheese signal. You blink. A cheese signal? He sighs. In the old tongue, curdling the veil meant breaking secrecy. The orchard is code. Probably the Queen's goat garden. You've only heard rumors of the goat garden. It's a secluded part of the royal grounds, fenced with woven ivy and guarded by three extremely polite yet deeply suspicious sheepdogs. Only the Queen and her most trusted kitchen mystics are allowed inside. It's where the milk for her private chèvre supply is sourced. And now you're being asked to go there, with a cheese message, in the middle of the night. Laura hands you a bundle wrapped in linen. Inside is a replica Emmental wheel, a dummy, just in case. And tucked beside it, your badge, newly stitched with a tiny spiral you've never seen before. Temporary clearance, she says. Say you're inspecting for grass-fed inconsistencies. You leave the fondue pit under cover of fog, cutting through the west courtyard and entering the garden gate just as the night watch bells toll twice. The dogs see you. They don't bark. Instead, one walks beside you as if escorting royalty. You find the orchard. It's silent, moonlit, soft with dew. And in the center, beneath a quince tree, a woman in velvet robes feeding a goat from a golden pail. She doesn't look surprised. In fact, she smiles. You bow, deeply. Your Majesty. She waves a hand. Enough of that. The Queen stands. She is smaller than you remember. Tired, maybe, but watchful. You've been busy, she says. You nod. Not entirely by choice. She chuckles. Choice is a buttered illusion. We follow the rind where it bends. She gestures to a nearby bench. You sit. The goat continues munching. The night chirps gently. The Queen speaks again. There is a war, she says. Not of swords, not of treaties, of flavor. You wait. She continues. There are those who believe cheese should remain neutral, quiet, palatable. They fear it becoming political. You think of the archive blade, of the coded holes, of the melting. Is that why the messages are hidden? She nods. Every mold has a motive, every texture a temperament. Then she turns to face you fully. I need someone inside. Inside what? She exhales. The Parmesan Circle. You go cold. You've heard of them? Whispers, tales. An ancient cabal of cheesemakers, flavor purists, sworn to uphold the doctrine of dryness. No softness, no innovation, only firm, aged austerity. They believe meltiness is weakness, and all cheese should resist both knives and sentiment. They've infiltrated the vaults, the Queen says. They've begun replacing Emmental messages with hard-rind propaganda. You whisper, that's why the holes are vanishing. She nods, they're filling them with silence. You clench your jaw. She places a hand on your shoulder. I need you to go to the vault. Pretend to be one of them. Learn what you can. But if you're caught, she doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. You nod. She hands you a scroll sealed with wax and a tiny wedge of cheese. It's warm to the touch. Show this to no one but the vault steward. Then she leans in and whispers, tell no one the cheese dreams. Let them think it's just milk and time. You rise, you bow, and as you leave the orchard, goat watching you like a fellow conspirator, you feel something stirring inside you. It's not fear. It's not even hunger. It's purpose. The cheese speaks. And now, you will listen. You don't sleep that night. Not because you're afraid, though you absolutely are, but because sleep feels disloyal now. Dangerous. Like leaving your post unattended in a field of whispering cheddar. The vault opens at dawn. So, you wait out the hours cleaning your badge with goat's milk soap, retying your sash in the approved twice-looped vigilance knot, and studying your new scroll like it might suddenly burst into cheese-scented flames. It doesn't, but it hums a little if held at the right angle. That's probably fine. At exactly 1 hour past moonset, a knock comes. No words, just 3 soft taps and a wedge of bread left outside your door with a tiny skewer of cured Gouda speared through it. That's the signal. The vault wants to meet. You're already packed. A sample logbook, the dummy Emmental, laced with coated curd, a cloth pouch of neutralizing herbs, and your most diplomatic expression, which you practiced in the mirror. It's 40% curiosity, 60% resignation, and 100% lactose tolerant. The vault entrance lies beneath the old churn chapel, a half-ruined stone building once used to anoint ceremonial cheeses before royal festivals. No one goes there now except pigeons and whisperers. You slip inside. The air is cold and smells faintly of dust, thyme, and oaths. A figure awaits by the altar, not cloaked, not hooded, just standing calmly, robes pressed, gloves spotless. "Inspector," he says. "Steward," you nod. You hand him the scroll. He cracks the wax, unfolds the parchment, and reads silently. His eyes flicker. Once, twice. Then he nods. "Welcome to the circle." No ceremony, no password, just acceptance. As if you've been expected all along. He leads you down a stone staircase lit by slivers of morning light through warped stained glass. One pane shows a wheel of cheese being lifted to the heavens by angels. Another shows a noble biting into a camembert and immediately confessing treason. At the base of the stairs is a vast stone corridor lined with barrels, crates, and towering wheels stacked like saints in slumber. This is the vault, and it is alive. You can feel it. Every breath echoes. Every step answers back. You pass signs labeled confiscated crumbles, disputed bloom, provisional Gruyere, contested Parmesan sealed pending trial. The steward guides you to a side room. Inside, a desk, 2 chairs, and an uncut wheel of Emmental resting on a red velvet pillow. Regal, resentful. "This arrived 2 days ago," he says. "It's unregistered, unclaimed, but the Rhine bears glyphs." You lean closer. He's right. Not symbols exactly, but indentations. Tiny ones. Forming what looks like, no, it is, the same spiral pattern from the orchard wheel. But here it's subtler, defensive. "Cut it," the steward says. You hesitate, then draw the archive blade. It glints despite the dimness. You slice slowly. The cheese resists, not in texture. No, the Emmental is compliant, but in silence. You're used to a hum, a whisper, even the soft sigh of aging curd. This one, nothing. Inside, the holes are perfect, too perfect. You count them, 12, all aligned. You look up. "It's clean." He frowns. You add, "But too clean." He nods. "We think they've begun sterilizing the messages." You exhale. "This is worse than you thought." You're instructed to catalog 3 more wheels. You do. Quickly, quietly, noting everything. Curvature, density, scent profile, even emotional residue, which is technically unmeasurable, but often blamed for nosebleeds during aged Limburger inspections. The vault runs on quiet efficiency. No one yells. No one jokes. They whisper. They nod. They disappear between rows of pungent silence like ghosts in linen tabards. At one point, you're handed a pair of gloves soaked in whey water and told to assist with a red rind emergency. You follow two vault stewards into a sealed room labeled Reformation Brie. Inside, a stack of wheels, weeping, literal tears of brine pooling beneath them. Someone's tampered with their temperature. They've begun melting from within. One steward begins reciting the stabilization litany. Bind the bloom, still the sweat, restore the wheel, deny regret. You join in. You don't know how you know the words, but you do. When the weeping subsides, the stewards nod and depart, leaving you alone with the brie. You touch one gently. It sighs. You don't tell anyone. Later, back at your desk, a new wheel arrives. Different. Labeled simply, from the eastern frontier, unscored. The rind is scorched. The label charred. But there, under a flap of blistered wax, another spiral. You wait for nightfall. You return to the fondue pit. Laura's already there. Gregor, too. The unnamed one nods at your arrival. You present the wheel. They slice. Inside, holes filled with wax. You remove the plugs. Inside each wax insert, tiny scrolls. 9 total. Each one a name. You read aloud. Baron Cuttermount, Lady Rilla of the Stone Dairy, Father Corduroy, retired, Sir Dren of the Hard Press, Countess Glazewheel, Emile the Brindled, page number 9, Alouette of the North Brine, unknown marked only with a stamped spiral. Each name is a whisper from history. And one, page number 9, is you. That was your training rank. A joke among stewards. You'll be lucky if you ever make it to page 10. But someone remembered. Someone marked you. You're not just an inspector anymore. You're part of the message. And now, you need to find the rest. The list haunts you. Not just the names, though yes. Seeing your own code name in a wheel of wax-packed Emmental is enough to make anyone rethink their career choices. But the implication, someone is organizing, someone knows who you are, and they're using cheese to tell you. You're not sure if that's flattering or terrifying. Probably both. You've returned to your quarters in silence. Scroll tucked in your sleeve, head filled with cheese ghosts and echoing rhyme phrases like, bind the bloom. Your satchel still carries the archive blade, now smeared with brie residue that smells oddly of lilac and smoke. You meant to clean it, you didn't. There's no time, because in the morning you're summoned again, this time to the Royal Salt Vaults. No explanation, just a scroll sealed in salt-stiffened wax with your name and a tiny Gouda sketched in the corner. You consider ignoring it. You don't. The salt vaults are rarely mentioned in court cheese circles. Too dry, too dangerous. The joke goes, if it crunches, it's cursed. But the queen herself allegedly once salted a wheel of Morbier so thoroughly it cracked in protest and spilled a map of siege tunnels through the western vineyards. You arrive at the vault escorted by 2 guards who smell of brine and suspicion. One carries a halberd, the other carries a bag of pretzels. You're not sure which is more threatening. Inside cold stone, soft echo, the air dense with history and sodium. You're led past shelves of ancient cheeses preserved in salt blocks. Some so fossilized they look like prehistoric fossils from an age when goats were 3 times larger and had opinions. At the end of the hall, a monk. Not a priest, not a steward, a monk. Draped in gray linen, face partially covered, eyes slightly too knowing. Inspector, he says, we require your nose. You've heard worse invitations. The monk gestures to a pedestal. Upon it, a wheel the size of a coach wheel, coated entirely in salt and wrapped in linen, bearing a curious mark. 3 concentric rings, each etched faintly with what appear to be runes made of curdled ink. This, the monk intones, was found beneath the eastern abbey ruins, buried beneath centuries of stone, protected by beeswax, still fragrant. You squint. Why me? Because you know what the holes mean. Your throat goes dry. You sniff, then wince. It smells impossible. A mix of hard parmesan, wildflower honey, and candle smoke. You touch the rind. It hums. You unsheath the archive blade and slice, gently, inside Emmental, but not ordinary Emmental. The holes pulse. Each breath you take draws out their aroma. You swear one size back. You count them, 13, and there, tucked inside of the largest cavity, is a folded note. You remove it with tweezers, unfold it. On the parchment, written in a strange, looping script, the wheel must turn, the rind will split, the circle reforms. Then beneath it, a symbol you recognize. The Queen's goose crest upside down. The monk sees your face and nods grimly. The fondue is a distraction. You blink. Excuse me? He gestures around him. All this melting, all this fuss over brie and bloom? It's misdirection. The circle wants us to look soft while they go hard. They're drying everything. Removing scent. Removing speech. You stare at the note again. The circle reforms. He places a hand on your shoulder. You need to go to the outer regions. You frown. Which outer regions? Where the Parmesan still rules. Your stomach flips. He means the aged citadel. The furthest district. The realm of stone-like wheels, dust-coated monks, and knives so sharp they ring when touched. No soft cheese allowed. No melt permitted. Only hard truths. You're given travel papers. And a traveling companion. A donkey. Named Rindragon. He smells like oregano and resignation. You pack. Your official papers. A spare pair of gloves. The parchment with the Queen's crest. 2 wedges of diplomatic Gruyere for emergencies. And of course, the archive blade now stored in a hollowed-out loaf of pumpernickel. Your journey takes 2 days. Through hills coated in mist. Past abandoned cheese farms, once home to happy wheels now hardened by silence. At one point, you're overtaken by a merchant cart carrying bootleg cheddar sculptures of saints. You say nothing. By the 3rd night, you reach the gate of the aged citadel. The guards eye your donkey. Declaration of dairy? One asks. You hand him the scroll. He reads it, frowns, then lifts the archive blade out of the bread. Did you think we wouldn't check your loaf? You nod. But I hoped. He huffs. Very well, proceed. But keep your metaphors mild. Inside the citadel, cold winds, sharper accents, and wheels of Parmesan so old they require translation. Everything is beige and brittle. You check in at the hard-press hall, the only inn in the region that accepts inspectors. Your room is furnished with a cot, a candle, and a single poster that reads, "Firmness is truth." You don't sleep. Not really. Not after what you've seen, because you know now. This isn't about flavor. It's about control. The cheese used to speak. Now it's being told to shut up. But not if you can help it. Not if you find the next wheel. You wake up with salt in your eyelashes and a goat hair in your mouth. Rindragon is already awake, munching on a stray scroll someone left near the compost bin. You tug it from his jaws. Half of it is missing, but what's left reads, "And so the cheddar was silenced with wax, and the council bowed not in prayer, but in fear." Well, that's an omen. You set out early, past the Parmesan Plaza, where aged wheels are sold under lock and key, and where silence is enforced, not by law, but by sheer cultural stiffness. Everyone walks like they have already made peace with dehydration. Your first stop is the aromatics registry, where you're told a monk named Brother Splint has been holding a confession. Turns out confession is code for flavor treason. You're led into a low chamber with stone benches, a single candle, and an overwhelming scent of regret and nutmeg. Brother Splint sits in the corner. His eyes are watery. His tunic bears the insignia of the dry circle, a fan of cracked cheese slices embroidered in browns and golds. He looks up. Are you the listener? You nod. I prefer Inspector. He sighs deeply, like a cheese sighing as it cools. I have something, he whispers. Something that melts. Your breath catches. He reaches beneath his robes and draws out a tin. Inside, wrapped in waxed parchment, is a wedge of illicit fondue starter. Still soft, slightly warm. You look at him. He stares at the floor. I couldn't let it harden, he murmurs. I tasted emotion. You nod slowly. Then very carefully you unwrap the wedge. The scent is delicate, complex. It tastes like hope. You take one bite. Your heart flutters. It's not strong, but it's enough to remember. Cheese can feel. You ask where it came from. He hands you a slip of parchment. It's a map, but not of roads, of wheels. Literally, he's drawn the location of a rumored Emmental spiral using only diagrams of cheese aging stages. At the bottom he's written, below the Hall of Cracks, follow the brine lines, avoid the watchers. You offer him protection, but he shakes his head. I've melted once, I won't melt again. You nod. Back in the plaza, you follow the map. Through the spice tunnels, past the vinegar urns, down a spiral staircase built entirely from abandoned press stones. Eventually, you reach it. The Hall of Cracks. Not a place, a person. Mistress Hilda. She's the last known crack reader. Someone trained to interpret the micro-fractures in hard cheese rinds. Some say she once predicted a rebellion from the way a cheddar split during slicing. She sits on a stool wrapped in linen, hands powdered with calcium dust. The walls around her are covered in cheese slices pinned like specimens, each one broken differently. You bow. She gestures. You present the wedge. She doesn't speak. She simply cracks it. The fissures run fast, zigzagging, curling, then freezing into a strange shape. She leans in, hums, then finally says, Spiral 3, Message 4. It's not about aging, it's about alignment. You blink. What? She points to the curve. They're placing cheeses in specific spaces, on altars, in rooms. It's architectural. Gregor was right. The spirals aren't just messages, they're maps, blueprints. You ask her what it means. She hesitates, then whispers, they're rebuilding the circle, physically, room by room, cheese by cheese. You thank her. She gives you a piece of wax chalk and says, draw only with this. The others are compromised. You exit into the cold light of the Parmesan Quarter, your brain spinning faster than a rolling camembert on cobblestones. You try to breathe. You fail. Because standing across the plaza, looking directly at you, is a steward from the palace. They nod once, then vanish. You turn. Someone else is behind you, a child this time. They hand you a folded scroll and run. You unfold it. It reads, you've gotten too close. The next wheel you cut will scream. You look up. No one's there. Just pigeons. Of course. Always pigeons. You pocket the scroll. Then slowly reach into your coat and feel the archive blade. Still warm. Still humming. And somewhere, far below the citadel, you know, another spiral waits. Because the cheese doesn't lie, it just curdles its truths. You don't head back to your inn. That would be far too reasonable. Instead, you follow the pigeons. Not because they seem helpful. Frankly, they've been smug this entire operation. But because one of them is wearing a very tiny scroll on its leg, and because when it makes eye contact with you, it nods. You follow it past the wheel market, past the salt troughs, through a brined alleyway of suspiciously quiet wheels wrapped in unlabeled wax. Then down a wooden staircase, across a narrow bridge, and finally to a side door that smells strongly of time and poor decisions. The pigeon coos, pecks at the door, then flutters off. The door opens. Behind it stands a woman in velvet and chainmail. She says, "Page 9, took you long enough." You begin to speak. She cuts you off. "We don't have time. Bring the blade, bring the map, the circle's convening." She's not wrong. You enter a stone chamber lined with grated platforms, where wheels of cheese rotate slowly beneath polished copper mirrors. Aromatic steam rises from cracks in the floor. It's humid, funky, and deeply sacred. This is the Cradle of Crumbs, a long-lost meeting chamber of the original Council of Curd. Somehow it still exists. You count 7 people already seated. One is eating a soft blue while reading a scroll sideways. One is meditating next to a bowl of grated Parmesan. Another is stitching cheese symbols into a flag with alarming speed. You are offered a chair, not just any chair. A tasting stool carved from retired brie crates and capped with a cushion shaped like a spiral. You sit. The woman in velvet, she introduces herself now as Rila of the Stone Dairy. Yes, the same one whose name was on that hidden scroll inside the spiral Emmental, slams a wooden spoon onto the center table. "We don't have long," she says. "The next move is theirs. But we will not let the Parmesan circle rewrite the wheel." Murmurs of agreement. You try to look composed. You fail. Rilla continues. "They've sealed off the fondue archive, melted most of the maps. They're drying the spiral networks, converting every soft message into hardened crust." Another member, Gregor, surprisingly, adds, "They've planted spies in the Brie Guild. Half the Bloom Committee's already missing." Rilla nods. "And worst of all, they've begun issuing shape licenses." You blink. "What?" A scroll is passed to you. On it, a decree signed by the High Steward of Preservation, declaring that all cheeses henceforth must conform to approved geometries. No wheels wider than 2 palms, no wedges with more than 3 angles, no unregistered curves. Gregor mutters, "They're targeting the spiral." "Of course they are." Rilla stands again. "We believe they're moving the queen, slowly, quietly, away from the spiral doctrine and toward full preservationism." You whisper, "But she summoned me. She gave me the archive blade." Rilla looks at you, long and hard. "We don't know that was her." The room stills. Someone drops a Gouda. No one picks it up. You swallow. They hand you another wheel. Fresh, slightly damp, carved with symbols. You cut. Inside, a hollow. Inside the hollow, a tiny key. No explanation. No label. Just the key. Rilla says, "That opens the chamber of tastes." Your hands go cold. Because that chamber's a myth. An old palace tale. A secret vault below the queen's personal pantry, used only in times of great culinary danger. You nod slowly. "Where is it?" Gregor grins. "We don't know, but the mice do." You stare, then follow his gaze. At the far end of the chamber is a small wooden tunnel. Next to it, a cheese wheel with a single bite mark. And next to that, a mouse, wearing a hat, tiny, red, feathered. It squeaks once, then runs into the tunnel. You follow, crawling now, through cramped wood and cold air, past discarded rind, past forgotten crumbs, past a tiny sign that reads, "Silence, the wheels are listening." Eventually you emerge. dusty, sore, and very much questioning your life choices, into a room lit by golden sconces and lined entirely in cheese spoons. Silver, brass, wood, bone, glass, each carved and labeled. This is the chamber of tastes. A whisper hums through the air. To taste is to trust. To trust is to open. You hold up the key. A drawer slides open. Inside a wheel, plain, unlabeled, smelling faintly of forgiveness and storms. You slice. Inside, no mold, no spiral, no code. Just a single letter, folded and crisp. You open it. The queen is not who she was. They've curdled her memory. Find the spoon that sings. And then at the bottom, signed, page 10. You sit down? Hard. Because that was never supposed to exist. No one ever made it to page 10. It was a joke, a myth, a dream whispered between apprentices while cleaning their first fondue pot. But now, page 10 is real, and they know more than you. You look around. There are hundreds of spoons, and only one will sing. The chamber of taste is quiet in the way thunderstorms are quiet, full of static, waiting for the right spark. You sit cross-legged in the center of the room, surrounded by a forest of cheese spoons, each one hanging delicately on velvet-lined hooks. Silver ones gleam with status. Wooden ones whisper of peasant weddings and goat baptisms. One spoon has a handle shaped like a laughing badger. You try not to take that personally. The letter from page 10 still trembles in your hand. Find the spoon that sings. You're not sure what that means. You don't want to know what that means. But your fingers are already moving, reaching slowly toward the nearest spoon. A modest brass one with floral engraving. You pluck it from its hook. Nothing. You listen. You sniff. Still nothing. You try another and another. By the fifth spoon, you're sweating. By the ninth, you're questioning whether you're the right inspector for this. By the 20th, you're considering applying for a career in vinegar. But then, on spoon number 21, a curious thing happens. It vibrates. Softly, just once. You freeze. It's an unremarkable object. A dull pewter spoon with a single spiral etched into the handle. So faded it looks accidental. But when you hold it up to your ear, you hear a note. Not a hum, not a whistle. A note. C, middle C to be exact. You test it again. Still C, and suddenly everything clicks. The coded spirals weren't just visual, they were auditory, a musical language. And now holding the spoon to your ear, hearing the note resonate in your bones, you understand. The cheese has been singing all along. You rise. There's no need to test the others, the spoon has chosen. At the edge of the chamber, you find a door hidden behind a wall of aged grana padano, a ceremonial block that shifts with pressure. You press the spoon against it. It swings open. Inside, a spiral staircase made entirely of compressed waystone. You descend. At the base, you find a room filled with melted wax seals, scrolls half burned, spoons strung like wind chimes from the ceiling, and in the middle, a vat, still warm, still humming. You approach it cautiously. Beside it, a nameplate, Fondue Archive, Level 2. This is where the melted cheeses go. Not discarded, not destroyed, stored. You dip the spoon in. The hum rises. You swirl it once, and the fondue sings. A melody, simple, familiar. You recognize it. It's the old inspector's lullaby, the one sung to apprentices when they pass their first Rhine certification. But here it sounds different, slower, weighted. You swirl again, and something emerges, a shape floating in the vat, solidifying from the mix of cheeses, a medallion, circular, marked with the Queen's crest and a spiral overlay. You lift it. It's warm. It buzzes. You hear footsteps. You pocket the medallion, spin around. A figure enters the chamber, not cloaked, not masked. Page 10, or at least you assume. They wear no insignia, but you feel it. Like a name you haven't spoken in years, but still remember how to say. You found the spoon, they say. Their voice is soft, calm, filled with dairy-laced knowing. You nod. They step closer. Then you're ready. For what? To hear the cheese speak for itself. They reach into their satchel and pull out a wheel. Plain, uncut. They offer you the archive blade. You take it, slice him. Inside, a spiral, yes, but also words, etched in the curd. Tiny, perfectly carved. We are not decorations. We are not silence. We are flavor. We are force. The rind remembers. You look up. Page 10 is already placing another wheel on the table. You're not the inspector anymore, they say. You're the translator. You feel dizzy, excited, terrified. Your badge is heavy in your pocket. The archive blade pulses with warmth. You whisper, "What do I do now?" Page 10 smiles. You listen, you document, you protect the spiral. Then they vanish through a hidden doorway lined in toasted breadcrumbs. You are alone, except not really. Because the cheese is here, and it's waiting. The fondue hums gently behind you. The spoon glows faintly, and the medallion beats in your palm like a second heart. You turn back to the wheels. You sharpen the blade, and you get to work. Because silence is a rind, and it's time to slice it open. You spend the next 3 days slicing, not wildly, not blindly. You're precise now, measured, methodical. You cut as if every wedge holds a nation's confession, because increasingly it does. Each wheel sings a different note, some low, some high, some trembling with anxiety. You recognize the cheese as one overaged in a storm cellar. Others bold and defiant, like the cheddar that bellowed 2 bars of what you're pretty sure was the resistance anthem. Brie not bound. Page 10 doesn't return, but someone else does. A steward, younger than most, nervous, unofficial. He wears no sash, just a pin in the shape of a garlic bulb. He enters the fondue archive silently and places a small wheel wrapped in onion parchment before you. They said you'd know what to do, he whispers, then bolts back into the corridor before you can ask who they is. You eye the wheel. It's not much to look at, dimpled, vaguely offended in its posture. You unwrap it slowly, half expecting it to leap at you like a cursed brie. Inside a single wedge, hollowed. Within that hollow, a dried fig, sliced and preserved. Inside the fig, a note. Of course, you've done well, but the Parmesan circle moves fast. They plan to overwrite the archive. They've found a way to reseal messages, fake spirals, quiet wheels. You must cut the Royal Reserve. You freeze. The Royal Reserve is legend, sealed years ago, supposedly kept beneath the Queen's summer pantry, wrapped in gold cloth and guarded by mice trained to attack on scent. It's said to hold the original spiral, a wheel coated so powerfully it once predicted 3-court divorces and a solar eclipse. No one has ever seen it. Most inspectors think it's a bedtime story for ambitious apprentices. But if this note is right, you stand. No hesitation. The archive blade hums. The spoon in your pocket twitches slightly, like it too senses what's coming. You gather what you need. The medallion, a fresh logbook, 1 vial of brine-resistant ink, a small wheel of calming cheddar for nerves. Then you head out, back through the fondue tunnels, past the melt drains, and into the outer pantry corridors. The summer pantry is warm, luxurious, not because of sun, but because of intention. Someone has preserved it perfectly. Every tile gleams. Every rind is stacked like sculpture. You see wheels arranged by constellation, a cluster of Edom labeled Capricorn's Mercy, a pyramid of goat's cheese marked Milk of Mars. And then, the guards. Two of them. One holds a spoon, the other a block of dense Gruyere, flat on one side, carved with intricate sigils on the other. Declaration of entry? One asks. You flash the medallion. Their eyes widen. They part without a word. Inside the sealed chamber, cold marble, low ceiling, rows of velvet shelves, and in the center, on a pedestal shaped like a crowned wedge, rests the wheel. You know it instantly. Not because of its size, it's barely bigger than a lunch portion, but because of the stillness in the room. It doesn't hum, it doesn't sigh. It waits. You step forward. No velvet ropes, no alarms. Just the sense that if you fail here, the spiral ends. You draw the archive blade. It flickers. You press it gently to the rind. The wheel resists. Of course it does. Then a crack. Not a break. Not a fracture. An opening. Inside, no curd. No mold. Just space. A spiral tunnel boring down into the wheel. You lean close. Whispers rise up. You drop your spoon into the spiral. It vanishes. Silence. Then a low melodic voice. Spectre, you have arrived. You have tasted. You have listened. Now you must remember. You stagger back. The spiral is changing. It's unfolding. Not physically, but in your mind. Memories, not yours, flood your senses. A cheese wheel hurled from a tower. A queen unsealing a brie to read her enemy's plans. A rebel using ricotta to decode prisoner names. A child hiding a cheese in their coat to protect its truth. You blink. Your knees buckle. You fall to the floor, sweating. The wheel seals itself. The pedestal rotates. The cheese is gone. Reabsorbed? Taken? You don't know. But in your hand, you find a sliver, a tiny shard of spiral rind glowing faintly, and a new message burned in the back of your badge. You are now page 11. You sit in silence for a long time. Then you stand. You have work to do. Because if the Parmesan circle is sealing spirals, erasing messages, burning bloom and aging out truth, you must remember louder. One wedge at a time. There's a subtle shift in how people look at you now. Not with open awe. This isn't the sort of world that rewards visibility, but with something quieter. Respectful glances. Extra space in crowded corridors. A bowl of mint curd left anonymously at your door. The kind of reverence reserved for those who've done something unthinkable and survived. You are page 11. You still haven't said it aloud, but the medallion glows gently against your chest. The spiral shard thrums softly in your pouch. And the archive blade no longer feels like a borrowed artifact. It fits your grip like it was made for it. You haven't slept in 36 hours. You smell faintly of thyme and blue mold. You've never felt more awake. Your first act as page 11 is not revolutionary. It's archival, because now more than ever you understand. The spiral doesn't just need defending, it needs preserving, recording, translating. You return to the fondue pit and find Gregor already waiting. You heard, what you ask. He nods. The reserve? Gone? Not gone, you say. Moved. You open your satchel and place the spiral shard on the table. It glows just enough to illuminate the outlines of the wheels around you. Laura joins you minutes later, followed by Rila, Brother Splint, and two cheese whisperers from the North Corridor you've never officially met, but have always suspected were extremely important, based solely on their linen cloaks and extremely judgmental brie palettes. You don't sit at the center of the table. You sit slightly to the left. That's how the spiral turns. The shard is placed at the center. One of the whisperers places a new wheel beside it. An aged goat's cheese laced with fig leaf and rebellion. It is sliced. Inside a song. Not just a note this time. A melody. You recognize it. The same lullaby the fondue sang, now with harmony. Another spiral, a new message. Gregor leans forward, translating as it hums. The queen fades, a new mold rises. Stir gently, slice carefully. The wax cracks from within. Laura murmurs, "It's starting." You all nod. You retrieve your logbook and begin transcribing. The code of the spiral must be updated. Words, notes, grooves, cuts, even the position of each curd bubble. It all matters. One wheel speaks of old recipes, ways to ferment without oversight. Another contains coordinates, hidden in rind patterns, leading to old barns long thought collapsed. One wheel contains nothing at all until placed beside the reserve shard, where it sweats in Morse-like dots. Gregor translates, "Beneath the butter chapel, second stone from the well, lift, unwrap, remember." You make the note. Then the room goes still, because Rilla places her own contribution on the table. A wheel, large, dense, gilded. This, she says, was the queen's. Her personal brie, never aged, never served. You all step back, because that's dangerous. Uncut ceremonial cheese, that's as sacred as it gets. Some call it divine dairy. You're sure? You ask. Rilla nods. She gave it to me, said I'd know when. You slice it, and immediately regret it. Because what emerges is not just scent, it's voice. The cheese doesn't hum, it speaks. Not words, not language, but emotion. It laughs gently. It grieves. It remembers. Suddenly, the spiral isn't a code. It's a person. You collapse. You are underwater in sensation. Rain on a metal roof. A goat's nose pressed into your palm. The warm ache of soup on a frost-bitten day. Somewhere inside it all, you hear her. The queen. She's singing, but it's not a song of rule. It's a goodbye. You wake sometime later. Gregor sits beside you. You saw it. You nod. She's not herself anymore, you whisper, but she left this for us. You look around. The fondue pit is glowing. The wheels hum in unison. You retrieve a blank scroll and begin writing. Because someone has to remember. Someone has to record the words she left in cheese. You dip your quill. The first words you write. Let flavor guide, let firmness bend, let spiral speak. A new doctrine, a new record, the Spiral Testament. Your logbooks will triple, your spoon collection will grow. But tonight, you just write. You log every scent, every cut, every note. You remember the queen not in statues, but in textures. And in doing so, you finally understand. Cheese was never meant to be silent. It was meant to sing. And now, you are its voice. The Spiral Testament grows faster than you expect. One day it's a single scroll, then a folder, then a chest, then an entire library wing, newly carved behind the vinegar casks and camouflaged by a suspiciously organized stack of Gouda. You call it the Crumb Archive, and while the name sounds like an afterthought, people begin to arrive. Quietly, respectfully, sometimes bearing nothing but a story and a rind. Each one tells you something new. A monk arrives with a wheel of a menthol aged in storm barrels. It contains a storm map, not of geography, but of political unrest. Wherever this cheese was tasted, the people revolted within 3 moons. You log it under predictive dairy, category orange. Another guest, a baker's apprentice. She brings a half-melted brie sealed in tallow. Inside, not a message, but a memory. Her grandmother's voice telling a bedtime story about the first spiral, a wheel so powerful, it whispered its recipe into the dreams of hungry children. You mark it, cultural echo scented. The spiral is working. You're not alone anymore. In fact, you're crowded. People bring wheels, spoons, whispered songs, figs wrapped in oaths. A child even brings a cheddar wedge carved with a tiny goose. You start a wall of unconfirmed curds. It fills up by Tuesday. And yet, something's missing. The queen, not her body. That's accounted for. She still sits on the throne, nodding at ceremonies, tasting 3 cheeses per banquet, wearing her feathered crown like it doesn't hum anymore. But you've seen it. Her eyes are dim. Her taste has been muffled. Someone, some circle, has dulled her senses, tightened the wax, clamped the flavor. And then one afternoon a wheel arrives. No note, no name, just a firm, silent Gouda with no holes. You slice it, inside nothing. Not metaphorical nothing, literal void. No curd, no scent, no hum. You stare into the absence, and it stares back. Then you hear it, faint, cracked, like a whisper through stale parchment. She's still inside. You drop the wheel. It doesn't bounce. It lands. Hard. You call the council. Gregor, Rilla, Laura, Splint, even Page 10, who arrives wearing an edible cape made of caramelized blue. We can't just slice her free, someone says. We could melt her memory, someone else suggests. No, you say, we spiral. And so you gather wheels. The oldest ones. The most emotional, a soft chavre from the Queen's girlhood picnic, a Gouda from her coronation, a rogue raclette that once made her cry. You shape them in a circle, a literal spiral curling inward. In the center, the Gouda void. Then you play the spoon. Not strike, not bang. Play. The one that sings in C, then the one that sighs in F. A brie spoon that wobbles into a minor key. The chamber fills with vibration. Rin shudders. The air tastes like thunder before a warm rain. Then a gasp. The Gouda cracks. And inside, her voice, weak but present. I dreamed in bloom. I heard the hum. You didn't forget me. The Queen remembers. She is not cured, but she is curing, like the finest cheese. Slowly, with care, the spiral deepens. That night in the fondue pit, you slice one final wheel. Soft, gentle, forgiving. You cut it not for information, but for comfort. And you eat it. Alone. With your logbook open, you write, it began with flavor, it ends with voice, the rind returns, the spiral remembers. And then you sleep, finally, not from exhaustion, not in secret, not taxed. You sleep because the spiral is safe. And so are you. And tomorrow the cheese will sing again. And now, the cheese settles. The spiral softens. The fondue cools in its pot, no longer whispering, just resting, like a story well told or a wheel well aged. You are no longer an inspector, not even a page. You are simply still. The halls are quiet. The rinds are uncracked. The parchment curls slightly at the corners, warmed by candlelight and time. You lean back in your chair. Yes, the one shaped like a wedge, and allow your body to sink just enough to feel the weight of a life made meaningful by flavor and faith. The archive blade sleeps in its sheath. The medallion hums faintly but not urgently. The cheeses on the shelf no longer call out. They wait patiently, knowing tomorrow brings new spoons, new notes, new spirals. You let your breath slow. Let the air wrap around you like soft chèvre, gentle, tangy, and full of memory. The queen's eyes shine again. The council stirs. And somewhere in the deepest part of the vault, a young wheel begins to form its first spiral. Tiny, unsure, but ready. You smile. You close your logbook. You dim the candle. And you drift. Through scent, through memory, through rind and bloom and bite. Not worried. Not restless. Just floating. Because the cheese is safe, the spiral turns. And all is well. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.